Brilliant. So our panel now, ladies and gentlemen, is looking at the steps that traditional media companies are taking to secure not only its future, but it's also its financial future. So the message that it's sending to the markets, to investors around the world. And when we're talking about traditional media companies, in this context, we're really talking about broadcasters, pay TV operators, and on the broadcast side, of course, that's ad-funded, license fee-funded as well. And seeing how those players are regarded alongside some of the shiny new players in over-the-top distribution. We have on the panel, from my left and your right, we have Jean de Fougerolles, who's the Chief Executive of Ascension Ventures. We have Emma Lloyd. We have Tony Dolph from Sky, sorry. We have Tony Dolph from, sorry, Tony, Sea Change, sorry. And at the end, we have Alex de Groot, who's the media analyst from Peel Hunt. I'm going to start with Jean de Fougerolles. John, we go back to the early days of interactive TV when you were at 2A TV.
Yes.
It seems a lifetime ago. You're now running, well, it's an early stage investment fund. For those in the audience who don't have a financial background, what is an early stage investment fund and what are the sort of companies that you've been investing in?
Yes, I started my career at MTV back in '97. So I started in normal TV and then ran a tech kind of media startup called 2A Media for 10 years. And 3 years ago started a fund that invests in digital media startups, mainly based around London, Tech City. So it's basically businesses, our focus is anything that's online video, music, live events, e-commerce, kids, and games. So we're very early stage, so the average investment size that we will do is between 250 and 500,000 pounds. So it's literally the first round that goes into usually 2 or 3 co-founders that have started a business. And I think in the last 5 years, what's happened in Tech City and all that is the ability of these founders to bootstrap some kind of digital product with no funding. And they build something off their own back for a year or two before we come in. So some of those have grown into bigger businesses in the last 3 years. So we've done about 50 investments, but one of those is called the Wellbeing Network, which launched on Sky. So that is it's basically a free-to-air pay TV channel started by Chris Ronsky, who is the founder of Zone Vision, Cello Zone. And the reason we wouldn't generally invest in a pay TV channel, but think kind of the Food Network, but for well-being. And the whole business model around the Wellbeing Network is around monetizing the audience, driving them online, and getting them to pay for anything to do with well-being. So that could be supplements, vitamins, equipment. So from a kind of broadcast perspective, it's basically an e-commerce play, brand building. But what's also interesting from why it's called network is there's a grassroots element through apps. So a little bit like plugging into the YouTube stars, we believe that the next generation of big stars will be in the well-being industry. So they've got a lot of apps and digital products that basically work with those, I guess, personal trainers and other people, well-being gurus, and they have a way to get those people through online onto their TV channel. So it's kind of a different 360-degree channel. That's one example. We've done a kids one as well, which started as a book and then became a kind of virtual world for 6 to 9-year-olds. And it's an ed tech play, but currently we are negotiating with a UK broadcaster to produce 52 episodes of a 2-minute children's stories that kind of interact through this Minecraft-type world that they've built that promotes creativity. So there's a whole range of different businesses that are kind of
ed
different.
tech play, that's a new one to me. So that's an editorial tech?
No, ed tech is education tech. So
education tech.
We think that we've reached about 15% of all 6 to 9-year-olds in the UK through schools. So we're trying to do the first crossover of education tech that goes into mass market entertainment. So that's the play there.
Thank you, John. Emma, you have one of the most interesting jobs in television at the moment. So tell us a little about what you do, because you're taking selective investments in companies at Sky.
Yes, that's right. I've been at Sky a while, so sort of 8 years, and the first half of my time there was running digital product development, launching things like Sky Go that Nick, and Now TV that Nick talked about earlier. But the last 3 years have been amazing for me personally, because it's been an opportunity for me to lead Sky's work in the way that we work with the whole startup ecosystem. So we opened an office in San Francisco about 18 months ago, and that's very much sort of part of our broad engagement with startups that includes investment, but also, you know, to be honest, in the majority of cases is around, you know, commercial partnership. And that now is quite the key prong for Sky's ongoing innovation. So we are one of the lucky players to have enough resource, obviously, to have a really strong internal engineering team. So that continues, as you've seen through the likes of Sky Q, to be really key. But in addition to that, now we've got sort of two additional key prongs, one being the way that we use startups to help us identify new opportunities and really stay at the forefront of innovation. And the third prong that I also look after is our partnerships with all the global tech platforms, which increasingly, you know, as you've seen from all the presentations this morning, that's just so important. You can't act in isolation anymore. You have to have the right partnerships with the small guys at the startup end, but also the big guys in terms of the tech giants. And just as by way of illustration, I suppose, of in particular on the investments in the startup side of things, we've made around 12 over the last 3 years. The first one being Roku, which I made when I was with my product hat on, and that was basically Sky saying, well, we're launching Now TV, we're going to make it available on all digital platforms, but actually we think there's an additional angle to have our own branded set-top box, you know, similar obviously to the way we do traditionally. So rather than go and develop our own, we invested in Roku back in 2012, and that now is the, you know, at the heart of the Now TV strategy, and it enables us to do things that we can't do with third-party platforms. And it now is actually the biggest consumption platform for us for Now TV. And on the Sky Q side, there are 4 of our startups that are part of the Sky Q proposition. In the online video piece, for those of you that have got Sky Q, and I encourage you all to get it, it is amazing. So in Sky Q, there's a new section which is online video. Within there, we've got YouTube, Vivo, some other apps, but the online video section that we curate is done by 2 of our startups from a sort of technology standpoint, one Mainstream, Elemental, Pluto TV, which is an LA-based startup, are doing the curation for us, so we curate the best content into playlists there. And then Whistle Sport, which is an MCN, a sports-focused MCN that we've invested in. They are one of the key providers for the sports content within there. So that is an illustration, I guess, of how we work with startups, which is not sort of arm's length. If we decide to partner with a startup, we really do sort of roll our sleeves up and work very collaboratively with them.
It's a real demonstrable benefits there. Tony, at SeaChange, you're relatively new at SeaChange, I
Well,
understand.
Graham, I am. So I'm 3 weeks into SeaChange. I have been in the video space many times before, so I'm a repeat offender. And at some point, I'll probably be reformed, but I'm not quite sure when at this point.
Tell us a bit about SeaChange and what it does.
Well, SeaChange is delivering worldwide literally billions of views. It's a company that's a software company. It's a tech company that's been around for about 23 years. And it deals with all the messy pieces in the middle. So content management systems, ingest, back office systems, advertising platforms, all the things that you need to organize your video and deliver it across basically any network or any device in the end. So for us, convergence and being able to support our customers and their customers in turn, the end users, the viewers, with a platform that allows them to basically converge all the services and all the management, but then distribute that across multiple screens and multiple use environments, be it an SVOD or a linear TV or anything else, is sort of what we do. And it's really fun for me, frankly, to be back into video. It's a great space. I spent about the last 5 years running a startup that was doing a global supply chain for print. Lots of fun, but lots of travels to places that you don't really want to go. And you know, TV just is so exciting because of the end users and the tech you deal with and the partners you deal with. So it's really fun to be back, honestly.
We'll come back to how you regard innovation across this fast converging landscape. Alex, you're a media analyst. Explain to the audience what a media analyst does and your background as well, please.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you for hosting this fantastic event today. Yes, so what I do, in a nutshell, for a small Moorgate-based investment bank is cover the media sector, predominantly in the UK, but also in Europe. And that would include many of the large cap household names, so Sky, ITV, and so on, all the way down to the very long tail of small, innovative companies, some of whom are succeeding, some of whom need capital. So the sector, as we all know, spans large and small. The excitement is at both ends of the sector.
So if I start for you, it's one of the topics that the other members of the panel like to come in on. As you look at the media landscape, how is that compared to other sectors within the investment community? How are we regarded, and how is TV regarded within that?
The sector overall is probably fairly analogous for institutional investors with the retail sector. In other words, overall, if you think about the sector in terms of legacy versus growth or structural growth, what was legacy is becoming smaller, and what is structural growth is becoming more and more important. And remember, what we think of in terms of the media sector would also include, for example, the likes of the big online portals. So, for example, one of the great success stories of the last 2 to 3 years, not necessarily at first glance a parallel with TV, is a company like Auto Trader, which was a print magazine, which is now a £4 billion online listing site, advertising portal, workflow tool. Investors, institutional investors, by and large, like growth. That's why in the last few years they've been very attracted to the likes of Sky and ITV and Auto Trader because they've successfully navigated the change. If any of us had been here 10 years ago, it would be unimaginable that the companies here today would have navigated this period as successfully as they have done. And that's to the credit of the execs and the product guys within the firms that make the products themselves so relevant to consumers. And if I get one message across today in terms of our own view on TV, it's that the sector is very relevant to advertisers. We haven't talked about that, but that's key. And secondly, that consumers, amazingly, are willing to pay increasingly large sums of money to access some of the content that we've heard about this morning across multiple formats.
Yes. Sean, from your perspective then, investing in the bright, new and shiny, how does TV look?
I mean, TV, when I was running my digital tech company, so TV was one of the key routes to market, was doing deals with broadcasters and platforms to reach an audience. I think because we are putting relatively small amounts of money in seed capital, the main distribution channel, the main way that our startups are reaching audiences is through YouTube, Facebook, and basically understanding cost of acquisition versus lifetime value. So TV is less relevant. I think as they get bigger, so one of my businesses is talking to ITV and Channel 4 about equity for ads, because as you want to build out into a big brand, TV is probably still the best way to build that brand.
Emma, you mentioned the resource you have internally in terms of the innovation team. Why do you need to do what you do? Why didn't Sky actually use its own innovation team to do some of the brilliant things that you've been investing in?
Good question. So I think, no company, however big you are, can have the resource that you can tap into in the broader startup world. We reviewed probably around 600 startups in the last 12 months.
600?
Which between them had literally billions of pounds invested in them. When you look at the media, the broad media tech landscape from a VC perspective, I think last year there was something like $18 billion invested in that. Now we can't compete with that, and we shouldn't try and compete with that. What we need to do is figure out a really strong way of complementing our internal innovation, which remains important, with that amazing resource that's out there. And that's very much sort of work in progress for us, but that's our aspiration.
How do you actually identify then the startups that you then want to go on to invest into?
So we have sort of very discrete focus areas within the business that, I agree with the key execs across the business and ultimately with Jeremy. And
the chief executive.
Yes, our CEO, and they provide the filter and the lens by which we are narrowing that funnel, because as we all know, literally there's just a huge number. So that's the first filter. It's making it relevant to around sort of 5 or 6 key areas that are relevant for us. And then, the sort of second filter there is around, trying to obviously evaluate the caliber of those startups, and we work very closely with key VCs. So, for example, we don't lead investments. We work alongside a lead financial investor, such as yourself, and we will use the sort of the quality filter, I guess, of how VCs are identifying those. And that's very useful for us. And the third metric, the third way of filtering for us is around use of people within Sky's business. So we haven't set up a separate venture arm. I leverage, the experts in Sky Media around ad tech, and I leverage the experts in Sky Sports around sports tech. So actually, I have, a wide range of people that I can bring to bear in making those choices.
Do we have anyone in the audience? Their hands up with those who would actually regard themselves as working for or an entrepreneur that is thinking about setting up a startup. Do we have any startups in the audience? Well, we do, a few show of hands. So how would these guys make themselves known to Sky? How do these guys market themselves to Sky?
So I think we, over the last 3 years, we've been trying to raise our profile, across Europe and in the US in particular. We have a startup website. People can come to us through that. But mainly, actually, it tends to be referrals that we'll get through the network. So yeah, we're absolutely open to getting propositions from startups that think they can work with us.
Yep. Tony, SeaChange has been built on a whole load of acquisitions over the last decade or so. Is this something which is continuing? Are you SeaChange continue to look at key acquisitions in key areas?
Graham, I think any technology company does, and it's not so dissimilar from Emma's comments, because you can't innovate all the time in every area. So you need to be intelligent about understanding your marketplace, the landscape, what technologies are enabling our customers to do new things. So we're always looking at that. I think we'll always try to be prudent about those things and make sure that we're understanding the use case for something like that, as opposed to acquiring things in a more speculative way, let's say. A company like SeaChange is a technology company. We have a core set of platforms that do specific things and bring value in ways. So typically we look at things that are adjacent, as opposed to parachute drops far, far away because of the risk. But we do continue to look at opportunities there.
Is traditional TV doing enough to secure its future in your opinion? You work right across the whole landscape.
Well, we do. So we're dealing, with traditional broadcasters, with distributors, be that telcos or cable operators, and increasingly wireless. We also are increasingly focused on content creators, studios and the like, who are looking to, find their own ways to market, find their own monetization models. So, the answer to the question is a difficult one, in that there's so much happening right now. What I see in the marketplace are many customers that are being very aggressive, be they a cable operator like Cox in the United States that's collapsing 15 headends onto one and going onto one back end so they can deliver much more cost effectively their services across multiple devices, to the BBC store in the UK.
That's powered by SeaChange, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I see a lot of activity and a lot of innovation happening, really, with traditional TV, and I don't think it's traditional anymore. So whether I can answer that question empirically and finally, I don't think that anyone can, but there's certainly a great deal of energy behind finding new ways to customers and working with technology companies to enable that. So there's a lot of energy there today.
Alex, as a priority, what do investors want pay TV and broadcasters to be doing?
They want to remain relevant to their consumers. So for Sky, for example, from an institutional investor's point of view, a key metric would be churn, going up or down, hopefully down, because that proves that you're relevant. That proves that the product set and the innovation that's taking place is relevant to what they want. So relevance to consumer is key, and dealing with some of the new entrants that we heard about in the first presentation, specifically in the OTT space. From an institutional investor's point of view, one of the big negatives or worries last year, not so much this year, but last year and the year before, would have been the inexorable rise of Netflix. For the time being, that has slightly pared back. And another point I'd like to make at this juncture would be a little bit careful about making broad brush generalizations about what happens in the US with what happens in Europe. Culturally, very different markets.
Yes, very, very good point. I'd like to open up to the audience now. If there's any questions out there, do we have a spare stick microphone? We do, fantastic. Any questions from the audience to the panel? Yes, we do. At the front here, if we can get a question. If you just obviously say who you are, please, and the organisation you represent.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lee Suka. I'm from Hitachi Consulting. My question is related to kind of online display advertising and the rise of the ad blocker. What's the TV industry doing to secure revenue streams for themselves related to high quality advertising?
That's a great question. Do you want to go first on that one, Jean?
I'm not sure what the TV industry is doing. I know that we're just closing, not to pitch a business, but we're just closing an investment in a business that will allow a publisher, and the publisher could mean anybody with an online audience, to place a widget on an article, and that widget will then map against that article kind of the 3 best products that are available with reviews and an opportunity to purchase that product. So if it was a fitness article, you might have the top 3 fitness bands on there, and that keeps that's considered editorial, even though it's kind of supplemental content, and allows the consumer to stay within the page if it's The Guardian and purchase that without going off to another site. So that's something we're investing in, that we're rolling out with 6 big publishers in the UK, as soon as they close this round of funding. So there are a lot of technologies that are kind of trying to get around this and trying to stay relevant to the reader.
Alex, how serious is ad blocking in your opinion?
It's fairly serious, and it spans publishers and broadcasters. I don't think there's a definitive industry response. I think it's watch and see, wait and see, and adapt. But it is an issue. I would like to just pick up on one thing, though, which is a narrative that Adam Crozier brought out in the most recent set of ITV results, which is that from an advertiser's point of view, there was a surge to what we call ad tech, perhaps 18 months, 2 years ago. Actually, what they found subsequently is that issues over viewability and fraud, if anything, have validated TV as a well-measured and well-audited advertising medium. So it's not all bad news.
That's a subject we'll be tackling tomorrow in here, in the keynote presentation with Simon Digleesh. Emma, is ad tech and ad technology, is that an area in which you're investing in?
Yes, so we've made 2 investments in that space, and we're working commercially with a third. So DataZoo is actually one of our larger investments, and comment made earlier about CMO and technology. I think my mic might have gone.
Yes.
DataZoo basically is we're using that as a platform, and the analytics that sit underneath it, both on the buy side and the sell side. So Sky Media.
I think you've got the problem with your mic. It's working, but it keeps dropping
It keeps
out.
dropping out.
Not allowed to move anymore, I don't
I'm
think.
just going to
Yes.
basically, not move. DataZoo is one, and that really is about using underlying data and algorithms to both better create products on the sell side, but then on the buy side, we're using it to create in-house capability around programmatic. Second investment is ShareThrough, which is a native advertising platform, the largest in the world. And to your point around, ad blocking, actually, so native advertising, which effectively is relevant content around the sort of primary content within a page, is something that we think fits well from a customer perspective within our apps and our websites, and ShareThrough powers that for us, and is a very strong proposition. And again, on the sort of viewability point, we're working with a company called Moat, very interesting startup there, because we are the largest advertiser in the UK. So, issues like that are incredibly important to us, making sure that the money we're paying is actually getting in front of real customers.
It sounds, from what you're saying, that the strategy is more about strategic positioning of Sky and learning through acquisition or taking stakes than it is an investment and a financial return. But are you expected to make a return on the portfolio?
I think our CFO would be disappointed if I started losing loads of money. But yeah, my KPI is not the growth in that portfolio. But obviously, And the reason why we work with, strong financial VCs is that however good we think a startup strategy could be, for us to get value out of it, they have to be financially successful. Not by design, but some of our investments have had an exit, 3 of them actually in the last 6 months, and that has been very strong financially. But luckily for me, given that the objective is strategic, all of those 3 startups are still working under the new parent owner with us, and we're still getting the value that we wanted.
So it could be a
originally.
self-financing strategy.
Yeah, I think so.
Very
yeah.
nice. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, we have a question here, if we can get a microphone. Just
Hi.
to the back.
Yes, it's David Price, Ericsson, out of Silicon Valley. And my question is, we've been investing heavily in the service side of things with the acquisition of Red Bee a few years back, etc. And we play out about 500 channels around Europe right now. I was asking the question if you feel like it's all about tech. Is it ad tech, ed tech, X tech, whatever that is, or is there investments going into services as we go through this tremendous change over the next few years?
John, do you want to take that first?
I mean, we have a very clear investment focus, which is we're intellectual property, call it content, and content could be a game, it could be a music app. We invest where it gets created, that IP, or where it gets consumed by the end consumer. So we don't invest in the pipes that connect those two, just because we think those big enterprise software players will come from the big players and require a lot of funding. So we try and focus on the edge where IP is created and consumed. So it's not necessarily one for me.
Tony, do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, we're in that space already, so clearly we're invested in it. I think that there'll be some more investments. I think that there's probably a lot of relatively well-heeled vendors already in that space, and in some ways they'll be the investors as well. So they'll be looking at strategic technologies, or what they view as strategic technologies, and investments in those to augment the things they're doing already. And again, that's driven by what the broadcasters, the content owners, in fact the viewers want. So I think whether it's ad tech or whether it's multi-screen or whatever the requirement is, that's where the money will flow in that area.
Alex, we heard last year the potential getting together of Vodafone and Liberty Global, which is going ahead in the Netherlands. They're creating a joint venture, but the big mega merger didn't come off. But then we still hear that Liberty Global may make a move on ITV using its, I think, 9.9% stake in ITV. And still there is this discussion that potentially that could also bring in a Liberty Global's Virgin Media, and that Vodafone would be interested in the whole thing. So where do you stand on that? These big predictions? It's fascinating mind games.
Yes, Liberty are 9.9% shareholders, so they have a seat at the table. They don't actually have a seat on the board, but they have a seat at the table in terms of their shareholding. And they've also really recently made an entry into the Republic as well. So they go head-to-head, Republic of Ireland, so they go head-to-head with ITV there as well. I see broadcast as an international game of Russian dolls. So in other words, at one end you have the massive companies, the Comcasts of this world, and then as we work our way down the scale, left to right, companies get smaller, and they're more vulnerable the smaller they are. And frankly, on a 5 to 10 year view, I would expect lots more consolidation, driven primarily out of the US. But you're right, at the moment it hasn't happened. There's been a lot of chat at the moment, but nothing's actually happened definitively. And I think if we're thinking about ITV as our key strategic asset here in the UK-centric perspective, we have to remember also that it has licenses granted by Ofcom, and it has a public sector remit, which I think any would-be buyer would have to be conscious of. So it's not a slam dunk, but yes, I would expect it to happen on a 3 to 5 year view.
And how do you regard Sky within that
Sky
analysis?
is regarded in the investment community with a mixture of I have to pick my words carefully here.
Smiling.
Absolute admiration in terms of the product set, and incredible vision, if that's the right word, for taking on the 2 opportunities outside of the UK, i.e. the turnaround story in Germany and Italy, because if they come off, you can have a leg to profit growth which investors can only dream about. So the potential is there, but it's very early in terms of the execution on those projects. But I think, again, we heard at the beginning of the presentation today that the number of households out there, specifically in Germany, where there's upside, is off the scale.
Yep.
In the UK, we have more maturity.
Do you see Sky making other acquisitions to bolster its pan-European footprint?
Probably to be discussed over a drink after hours.
More detail on that, we go straight to Emma, but no, we won't. You can't answer that question.
They are an awesome operator and incredibly well regarded.
In the US, Tony, we keep on hearing the stories, that Apple may move on a major studio, that they may buy Comcast even to basically, or even Time Warner, to further their own TV ambitions.
You mentioned Akamai?
No.
What, I didn't hear then. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Apple.
Apple.
Sure,
certainly.
Yeah. Where do you stand on that in terms of these major US high techs and their ability to basically use their sort of loose change to acquire some major assets?
Well, they're certainly funded to do so, and I would be speculating wildly if I represented that I actually know what they're going to do. To date, I think they've really been involved with what might look like major properties. But they still haven't really moved on those larger infrastructure-based companies like, the cable operators and the like, who are often also owning media companies of various sorts. So, I don't think that I am well enough informed to tell you. I think it's certainly a big part of the buzz today in the U.S. that'll happen. It would would entail a major change to their models as well. And some of the things that they're extraordinarily good at aren't as relevant in that space as they are in some more innovative technology-driven spaces. So my guess is that they'll take a very long look before they do that.
Do we have any other questions in the audience? It's time for one more question. Yes, we do. We have a question at the front from John Moulding, who's the editor of VideoNet News.
It's a question for Emma. Comcast have now licensed X1 to a couple of other operators. I just wondered whether Sky would ever consider anything in terms of making your platforms available to non-Sky-owned operators who are non-competitive geographically.
It is something that we are considering. It wasn't the primary focus, obviously, of developing Sky Q, but we've had a lot of inbound since the launch, and it's something that we are considering.
That's lovely. I'm going to have to cut this short, I'm afraid, because we've gone slightly over time. But please join me in thanking the panel. Thank you very much, guys.